Florida cities play a unique and critical role in creating the quality of life Florida residents enjoy. But sometimes it's not obvious why cities are important and why they're special. Many times, cities get lumped in with other governments, and the problems of those other governments and of politics more generally are assumed to be city problems too. But Florida's cities are different, and that difference is precisely why we need to make them stronger. How are they different? I think my friend, Dr. Scott Paine from the Florida League of Cities explains it best. Watch and you will understand why our focus on building stronger cities should be important to all of us.
My first political memory was when I was in first grade. It was a Friday. It was November 22nd. And it was about the middle of the day. I was walking in the hallway near the cafeteria where I could hear the women working in the kitchen, and they were listening to something on the radio. And all of a sudden, they started to wail and to cry like they'd heard something so horrible that they couldn't control their sorrow. Well, the following Monday, November 25th, my school was closed. And I remember sitting in our living room, my eyes glued to the little black and white TV screen, watching the funeral of our 35th president, John F. Kennedy, who'd been assassinated that Friday. I felt like the whole world had stopped because this man had died. And I wondered why. You know, at 6 years old, I didn't have any understanding of politics or political parties. My parents were very responsible voters who paid very close attention to the candidates and the issues, but they never talked about things in terms of us and them. Truth to tell, they probably voted for Nixon, not Kennedy, in 1960. But when Kennedy was assassinated, they honored him and his sacrifice. And so all I remember is sitting in the living room in the quiet and the sorrow. I tell people that that experience set me on the path to public service, and to this day I think that that's true. But there was another event that took place that also moved me from being a responsible voter to being an engaged citizen. It was personal, and it was local. In 1976, the school board in my hometown and the teachers union were coming to an impasse. Positions were hardening, and it looked like a strike was imminent. So the school board called a town meeting to explain to the parents what was going on and, I think, to try to rally support for their fight against the teachers. I was home from college for a few days, and I still cared about what was happening in my school, so I decided to attend the town hall. As I sat in the auditorium with 600 or 800 other people, I felt like what I heard the community saying was that the school board should go back into negotiations with greater flexibility. And never one to be shy about speaking in public, I decided to say something, so I took my place in line and then my turn at the mic. I respectfully summarized for the school board what I thought I was hearing from the audience. I suggested to them that the goal here was providing a public service, education, and it wasn't really a question of who won or who lost. I didn't side with the teachers. I sided with finding a solution to the problem. When I finished my 3 minutes, the auditorium exploded in applause, and a clip of that even showed on the 11 o'clock news that night. Well, within a few days, the school board went back into negotiations with the teachers. They negotiated hard, but both sides came with a sense that they needed to solve the problem, and they did. Not one day of education was lost that next school year. Well, except for the snow days, which are Mother Nature's gift to students in the Great Lakes state. Now, I knew, even then, it wasn't my words that made that happen. Still, I felt like this is how government and politics are supposed to work. People coming together to discuss with their elected officials the issues of the day, to debate, to disagree, to argue, to negotiate, and to always come back to the fundamental principle that the public had a right to be served, and it was the duty of public servants to do just that. Now today, watching our political system, it seems like politics is the exact opposite of what I experienced that night. We've been watching the national political system seize up like a car engine without oil for literally decades, as our parties have become increasingly polarized, and with them, the voters. And that's an important point. We are more polarized today than we have been in many years. But we didn't do that. We didn't wake up one morning and say, well, I'm not going to work with Republicans, or I'm not going to work with Democrats anymore. It was the political parties, Democratic and Republican alike, that have actively sought to divide us, the voters, for their own purposes. And look, I'm not making that up. Political parties exist for the purpose of gaining political power. That's not a criticism. That's their job. And the way you gain political power in a democratic republic is by mobilizing voters. But if you tell voters that the difference between our candidate and their candidate is really not that big a deal, many voters will stay home because they say, it doesn't really matter who wins. Reframe that difference as an existential threat to our rights or our nation, and we'll turn out in droves. Effective polarization leads to effective voter mobilization, and voter mobilization leads to political power. But effective polarization also leads to ineffective government. We've been here before. Our country has been divided by political parties many times in our history, and we know what this looks like. We get one of about three options. One, gridlock, as the two parties are about equally matched and they can't agree on much of anything. Two, policy chaos, as first one party gains control of the government and takes the government in one direction, and then the other party gains control and takes it in the opposite direction. Three, where one party gains a lock on power for a period of time, they spend all of their time and attention focused on their core constituency, while the rest of us, we're ignored. It seems like this kind of government is not at all the way we imagined that government under a democracy could or should be. It becomes, to paraphrase Winston Churchill, the worst form of government ever imagined by human beings, except for every other form of government that we've ever tried. But there is a place where democracy can work, and it often does. A place where the government works to meet the needs of the people, and they listen to the people's voice. I'm talking about local, nonpartisan government. In particular, I'm talking about cities. Our cities. Florida cities, every day, deliver the essential services we need for the quality of life we wish to enjoy. The water flows, trash gets picked up, first responders respond. We can walk, scoot, bike, ride, or drive through our communities. Our homes and our buildings are built to withstand Florida storms, and when we need to rebuild, we do it together. Local elected officials, municipal staff, and local residents rolling up our sleeves to get the job done. We're not talking about some helicopter drop-in photo op. This is us, local officials and local residents, getting the job done together. Now, you and I know that cities aren't perfect. Just like every other form of government, sometimes cities adopt policies that aren't fair to some of our residents. And sometimes it's not the policies, it's the people. Occasionally, someone will get elected to city office who uses their position for personal benefit or to help their friends and hurt their foes. And yes, cities make mistakes in policy that sometimes cost our hard-earned tax dollars. That's all true. But for all the ways that cities fail, there are literally thousands of ways in which cities are succeeding every day, creating thriving communities today and creating pathways for even better cities tomorrow. Part of the reason that cities work is they operate in an environment where excessive partisanship simply can't function. You know, Washington can shut down for a few days, and our state legislators, they can go home at the end of session with important work left undone. But if we do that in our cities, the effects are immediate on residents and businesses and our elected officials themselves, because There's no place for them to go, nowhere else that they call home. Our city is their city. Our quality of life is their quality of life. They can't avoid the consequences of their choices. And when we want to communicate with them, it's easy. Want to tell City Council how they're going right or wrong? City Hall's right here. You don't need to hop in your car and drive for several hours or get a plane ticket, a hotel room, and a few days off from work just to engage with your government. Our municipal government is right here where we live. And I can assure you that even in a big city like Tampa, where I served on City Council, my constituents knew where to find me, and they would let me know when I messed up. And they were kind enough to let me know when I'd done something right, too. That's another thing about municipalities. Our elected municipal officials aren't ambitious politicians with fat war chests and secretive donors. They're members of the community, like us. They care about the community enough to do the hard work of knocking on doors and making phone calls and going to coffees and backyard barbecues. They spend their time talking to us and listening to us. Seriously, talking to us and listening to us, not cutting expensive ads and sending out surrogates. And to get elected, they don't need to sell their soul to some secretive super PAC, nor do they accuse their opponents of being vampires. They just talk to us and listen to us, and then we decide and let our neighbors know what we've seen and heard, and we cast our votes. Even when we don't like something our cities are doing, we can work to change it. Every city has stories about residents, business owners, concerned citizens who are concerned about something happening in their city and worked to make the change. They organized their neighbors, they met with their elected municipal officials, they worked with the professional staff until the change happened, because that's how cities work. We are our city. You, me, our neighbor, the shop owner, the restaurant manager, the server, the custodian, the lawyer, the doctor, the nurse. We are our city. We can see each other. We can get to know each other. And we can decide where we want to take our city. And our elected municipal officials, they come from us. They don't come from someplace across the state or the country. They're not handed to us by some partisan political process over which we have next to no control. If we think someone should run, we can ask them. If we think we should run, we can run. Our local officials come from us. And it's in our cities that we can govern ourselves best. That's why our cities matter, because our right to govern ourselves matters. And the place that we can do that best is right here in our cities, towns, and villages, where we live and really do have a voice. Now, I'm not giving up on the feds or the state. They have an important role to play, helping meet needs that no one municipality can meet on its own. We need our federal and state government to do their job. What we don't need is for them to do our job, telling us how to make decisions in our own cities for our own future. And yet, it seems that many folks at our federal and state level in recent years have thought that that's exactly what they're there for. So they've forced cities and counties to raise taxes and fees to pay for priorities that are theirs, not ours. And they've stripped our cities of some of the authority we need to make the decisions, to do the work we want done, and to provide the services we want for our community. They've made it more difficult for us to govern ourselves precisely in the place where we can do that best, here at home, in our own cities. To protect our right to govern ourselves, there's something we need to do, together. Go to this website and sign up. I promise. We're not going to sell your data to anyone, and we're not going to spam you. And we're not about any political party or particular candidate, because our cause is our cities. We'll connect you to your local municipal officials. We'll keep you informed about what's happening outside your city that could help or hurt your ability to govern yourselves. And we'll help you get your voice heard at the state and federal level to let our federal and state officials understand that we want them to help our cities do what we want them to do by giving them the authority and the resources to serve us best. We don't need anyone from some distant capital city telling us what to do in our cities. Our cities are where we live, and we really do have a voice. We need to protect our right to govern ourselves together.